Welcome to Dr. Sara Said Khurram. Dr. Saiba, you are an icon of Pakistan, having won so many awards for your entrepreneurial and for your health and human services organization. And it's amazing that you have, with your 7 years of experience in the field of digital healthcare as a co-founder and a chief executive officer of Sehat Kahani. Now, Sehat Kahani has now become a very commonly used example of the work you have done. And as a result, you have won so many awards. And I think one day you will, inshallah, get a Nobel Prize for your work. And the list of awards is so long, but I must read it. Rolex Award 2019 as Associate Laureate, TIAW Award, CRDF Global Award, Ashoka Changemaker, ISIF Asia, the award 2016, and Arpatech Young Entrepreneur Award 2017 for her work. She is an IWLS Fellow by National Defense University, Pakistan, Rainer Arnholt Fellow of Molajo Foundation, Cartier Fellow 2018, very fashionable, and Acumen Fellow 2016, and TEDx speaker, and a Cherry Blair Foundation alumnus. She's also the first frontier innovator from Pakistan in 2017. And basically, I think the fundamental of her work, Dr. Sara's work, is compassion for suffering humanity, as well as focus on the WHO SDG, which is the, remind me again, SDG is, Dr. Saiba?
It's 3, 5, and 8.
Yeah, 3, 5.
Sustainable Development Goals, 3, 5, and 8.
Development Goals of WHO of 3, 5, and 10, with the focus on good health and well-being, gender equality, and reduced inequality in the access to education, career, and health for everyone. I've left out a few lines, if you don't mind, in the interest of time, Dr. Saiba. I know that your organization has touched 7.2 million lives. My God, that's a lot. And you run at least 35 clinics at this time, and basically mobilizing the dormant resource in our society of lady doctors who may not be in practice for various personal and family and social reasons. So I'm not going to take too much of your time, Dr. Saiba, and I'm going to give you the podium to take us to the world of imagination and possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Savet Saab. It's a pleasure to join all of you today. I'm not here alone representing Sehat Kahani. I'm here with my lovely co-founder, and it is us two that have created Sehat Kahani. So I'll just give her 2 minutes to give a brief intro of herself before we start. So Ifat, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for having us here. I'm also a medical doctor. I graduated from Ziauddin, and I pursued my master's in global e-health from University of Edinburgh. And I have been fortunate to be one of the very first people who got the MIT Elevate Prize from Pakistan for Sehat Kahani, of course. So that's about me. And we're very excited to be presenting our work today.
So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll keep the flow of the presentation. I'm going to share the journey of the company, the history, the work we've done so far, and Ifat is going to present towards the end the vision and the future of the company and our work with digital healthcare policy. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good. Great. So Sehat Kahani, which essentially means story of health, the vision and mission of the company is to democratize healthcare access for all in Pakistan and eventually globally, using online technology. And this company is co-founded by me and Ifat. We're both female doctors from Pakistan. You've heard our bios. But the thing that connects me and Ifat so closely to Sehat Kahani is the fact that we're female doctors. And when I was growing up, though, the only thing I remember my parents telling me was that you have to become a doctor. And I come from a middle-class family in Pakistan. And they always told me that I had to become a doctor. And when I entered into Dow Medical College in 2004, I realized that 90% of my class was also made up of female students. And that's when, during the years of the medical college, I realized that why a lot of females come to medical colleges by culture or by how we are taught is that being a doctor is considered a very noble profession for a woman in Pakistan. But as we started transcending towards the years of medical colleges, especially in the final years, we saw that a lot of females who came with an ambition to become the best doctor of the country and serve patients, very dedicated, hardworking doctors, some of them started kind of diverting from their mission and kind of transitioning into a new form of life where they thought that their education was okay, but their working was not. And many of them got married, started getting pregnant, started having families, and the conversations changed from becoming a good doctor to settling down. And that's a hard reality that is faced by so many female doctors in Pakistan, to a point that now it's gotten a name in our society. It's called the doctor bride phenomena. And if I match it with stats, you'll understand what it actually means for a country like Pakistan. So Pakistan right now has around 200,000 doctors, and these are rough stats because we don't actually have the exact data available, but this is what we got from the PMC website last updated. So Pakistan has around 200,000 doctors. 63% of more of these doctors are female. What the stats tell us that 85,000 female doctors in Pakistan today do not work. That's 1/4 of the total doctors. And what it does, and this along with the fact that a lot of male doctors leave the country for better work opportunities, the actual working doctors in Pakistan are around 90,000. And again, these are crude figures, but that's what we can estimate. And 85% of these doctors work in the urban areas, leaving a very small pool of doctors for the rural areas. In terms of numbers, it means that we have one doctor for around 1,700 patients, which of course brings us to a second very big issue in Pakistan. So there's a first issue where we have a good supply chain of doctors, but because there are so many missing and non-working doctors, the ultimately working doctor ratio is very less. And what's doing for a country like Pakistan is it's worsening our healthcare issues in the country. So Pakistan today ranks 154th out of 195 countries in terms of accessibility of healthcare. And so many preventive healthcare issues are aggravated in the country. So I've listed down a few: that we are the second worst country for neonates to be born. A woman dies every 37 minutes due to pregnancy issues. We have 40% stunting. We have an extremely high fertility rate, shows lack of family planning compliance. We have the highest rate of breast cancer in Asia. All that shows is that there is a huge doctor-patient mismatch in Pakistan, which creates a lot of issues for patients, particularly in the rural areas, because when doctors are not present in these communities, that space is filled up by quacks, midwives, nurses, dispensers, compounders, vets who are describing, maltreating, there's malpractice, and there's no control, and there's nowhere patient can reach out to. So these are the two main health challenges that we got because we were female doctors and because we were working in tertiary care hospitals. But there's a silver lining on top of this, which gives us some hope living in Pakistan. So there's a stat that says that 50% of our population does not access a doctor in their lifetime. But the good thing is that half of our population, 98 million people, almost half, has access to smartphones today. There's 40% internet penetration in Pakistan, and the telecommunication industry, the internet industry, is growing every year. This year alone, it added 2 billion PKR to the country's exports, and it's expected to go up to 8 billion this year. So this shows that if there's a doctor-patient mismatch, and if the doctor and the patient cannot connect physically, there is an opportunity to connect it through the power of technology. And popularly, it's known as the power of telemedicine, where a doctor and a patient can communicate virtually. We say this because we've seen that all over the world, telemedicine has seen boom, especially post-COVID. It's a $202 billion industry right now. So it's not just happening, it's not just something that we see making a difference in Pakistan, it's already making a difference globally all over the world. So somewhere stuck in this Dr. Bright phenomena in our lives, me and Ifat, very differently, we realized that we can communicate to patients online. So I started my residency in radiology and post my marriage, and I got pregnant and I had to leave my residency. And I had to shift to a new city with my husband. And when I went to the new city, I too realized that I had become a Dr. Bright. And I went into postpartum depression because I was in a new house with a new baby with nothing to do absolutely. In that time, I started doing online consultations in a small community clinic that was in Karachi. So I was in Lahore and I started doing consultations in Karachi. And that is when I realized that this is something that can be a benefit to so many doctors across the globe who leave their work, who leave their noble profession and sit at home. Somewhere during that time, also, although not connected to me, Ifat was also going through a similar dilemma. She had lost a baby in a premature birth. The next time she became pregnant, she was working in a pharmaceutical. She left her job because she was scared because of the taboo created that she might have lost the baby as she was working full time. So both me and Ifat connected on this idea, and that's how we created Sehat Kahani. And what Sehat Kahani does in a nutshell is it creates a network of home-based female doctors who connect to patients using a telemedicine-based solution. It's a chat, audio, and video-enabled platform. And we connect this large network of female doctors to patients in 3 ways. In low-income areas where patients don't have access to technology, where patients prefer traditional methods of care, we have telemedicine clinics. These are clinics that were previously run by nurses. We upgrade these clinics. We train the nurse in the clinic. So when a patient walks in, the nurse connects the patient to the online doctor. Remember, this is for low-income communities where people don't have access to smartphones. For urban users, over time, we also created a mobile application. And what it does is that every smartphone user that resides in an urban or a semi-urban area, they can download the application and they can connect to our doctors individually as well. For both our clinics as well as our mobile application, we have a support helpline so that if a patient comes after hours to the clinic or has trouble logging into the mobile app, they can call a helpline and can connect to a doctor on a small feature phone as well, making it possible for every kind of patient in Pakistan to connect to a doctor wherever and whenever they are. When we launched the app, and chronologically in the history of the organization, we started by creating a chain of clinics in low-income communities because that is where we saw the need to be immense. So we started in 2019 with a change of clinics, and we launched our app in 2019 for urban users. And when we launched the app in 2019, we launched the app for 2 kinds of users. So one user in Pakistan is a normal consumer like me. I'm sitting in my home. I have a smartphone in my hand. I have a medical issue. I download the application and I connect to a doctor individually. But unfortunately in Pakistan, a lot of smartphone users till date do not have digital payment mechanism. So just to make the sustainability of the organization better and to reach out to a large number of people in a small time, we also launched our services for corporate users so that the onus of payment does not fall on the employee, but rather than the employer. So our app is focused on a corporate market where we give it to corporate employees as well as individual consumers. If I talk about the patient journey in a clinic as compared to a mobile application, so if it's a low-income beneficiary, they'll find a clinic in their community. The clinic is upgraded, it's neat and clean. The patient walks in, the nurse takes the history and examination. The nurse then connects the patient to an online doctor. At the end of the consultation, a prescription is given, and this prescription can be printed at the clinic. We also have digital tools in the clinic that help the doctor make an informed decision about the patient. So we have an e-stethoscope, we have an autodermoscope, we have a glucometer in the clinic, and some clinics we have ultrasound probes as well. If I talk about the journey of the patient on the mobile application, these patients can download the app themselves. They can find a doctor on the application. They can make a payment if they're an individual consumer, or if they're a corporate user, their payment is already made. And there and then they can connect to a doctor by an audio, video, or a chat consultation. And here also we share the prescription on the mobile phone that can be shown to a pharmacy. Many people believed previously that Sehat Kahani is created to be an NGO, which is a popular name for social impact companies in Pakistan. But we have changed perceptions of a lot of people in Pakistan about what impact businesses are. Impact businesses are sustainable ideas that are created for a social purpose. And that's what Sehat Kahani is. So with every vertical that we have, there is a business line associated, there is a revenue channel, and there is sustainability attached. So in our clinics, we charge $1 to $3 for a range of services. It's fee per user. On the corporate application that we have, the employer has to pay annual subscription fee depending upon the number of employees they have. And on the consumer application that we have, the patients can pay as they go, or the patients can pay via subscription plans. So Sehat Kahani started in 2017 as an idea by two female doctors trying to change something for other female doctors stuck in a very unfortunate situation. Today, we are a flourishing impact business in Pakistan. We have the largest network of telemedicine clinics by any private company across the country. We run 35 telemedicine clinics across 4 provinces. We have clinics in Sindh, Punjab, KP, and Balochistan. We also service 753 corporations today through our corporate app. We are used by 2 insurance companies for all their corporate users, as well as we have individual accounts. We've done over 500,000 successful consultations to date. Our consumer app has more than 300,000 users. And overall, in our clinics, in our corporate app, and our consumer app, as well as our helpline, we've covered 7.2 million beneficiaries. If I talk about some disease analysis, so we see 60% of female users on our application, 40% are male users. This is also a myth that we break, that a large network of female doctors can also see female patients. We've broken that myth because 90% of our corporate users are male and 90% of our clinic users are female. We service to 30% rural areas and 70% semi-urban or urban areas. We see a wide range of primary healthcare issues on our application, including physical and mental healthcare issues, and we have a 93% user satisfaction rate. Over the years, we've created a network of 5,000 primarily female doctors. These are doctors that are based within Pakistan and outside Pakistan as well. A popular misconception is that we find doctors who are home-based since 20 years and have not worked, and how will they see the patients? No, we have a strict criteria that we hire doctors who have minimum 3-year experience post-house job and are not out of the workforce for more than 3 years. We also find working doctors who want to do additional hours after their physical clinics. We also have some male doctors in the mix for the specialities that we could not find female doctors for, or if there were some cultural issues between certain symptoms that had to be seen by a male doctor. But primarily our doctors in Pakistan, and 90% are global as well. COVID was a changing factor in Sehat Kahani's journey. So pre-COVID, we talked about telemedicine, but there was resistance to its scalability. But when COVID came in the country, I think that was a changing point in our journey, because in March 2020, the federal government and NCOC reached out to Sehat Kahani and asked for our app to be disseminated across Pakistan, because country was going in a lockdown and they needed a telemedicine player whose app can be disseminated for patients. So our app was used widely in the first wave of COVID-19. We saw 65,000 patients. We helped the government to test, track, and quarantine of COVID patients, following patients on the 2nd, 7th, and the 10th day of their consultation. We also enabled diaspora Pakistani doctors to join our platform through a special initiative by the government called Yaran-e-Watan, which allowed diaspora doctors to join Pakistani telemedicine platforms without having a license. We got around 40 experts on our platform that helped in the wave as well. A very interesting project that then followed July onwards was our Tele-ICU project. This was a massive project done in collaboration with Health Services Academy, which is in Islamabad, the NCOC, the federal government, and the 4 provincial governments. And our Sehat Kahani app was used in ICUs across Pakistan so that junior doctors and staff in the ICUs, because Pakistan does not have any critical care workforce. There are 70 critical care specialists in the country. And in COVID, you needed critical care specialists for patients in ICUs. So they used our app in 60 public and private ICUs across the country so that junior doctors and staff within the ICU can connect to a senior critical care specialist sitting in Islamabad, sitting in US, sitting in UK, so that real-time care can be provided to the patient. Did the patient need a ventilator? Did they need to be stepped up, stepped down? All of this was done during using our app in the second wave of COVID-19 till date. Another long-term collaboration that we did with the government was we collaborated with the National Institute of Health telemedicine platform, which is called Sehat Express, as a backup telemedicine provider. So they have a portal on which government doctors are available, but if the capacity runs out, then Sehat Kahani is the platform they get redirected to. If I talk about provincial segregation of the work that we've done our Tele-ICU project in Balochistan and also upgraded basic health units into telemedicine centers in the 35 clinics that we created. We've also worked extensively with the KP government for our Tele-ICU project. We've also upgraded some of their BHUs into telemedicine clinics as a part of our 35 clinics. Particularly with Sindh government in COVID-19, we followed up all their COVID patients through our app and our helpline. And we're now working with the government of Azad Kashmir, converting 13 of their basic health units into telemedicine centers. When we talk about healthcare in the country, we also realize that there's a massive stigma and taboo related with mental health in Pakistan. And unfortunately, Pakistan does not have adequate resource available for mental health. There are 400 psychiatrists and psychologists in the country. How many of them are working? We don't know. But when we enable physical healthcare through our platform, we make sure that we have adequate mental health care available as well. And we also subsidize this because we understand that because it is expensive, a lot of patients do not follow up for mental health consultation. So we work with CareTech Foundation and the British Asian Trust, subsidizing mental health care consultations on our app as well as on our clinics. And we also have launched our mental health care services, our Sehat Kahani application in universities this year, making sure that younger people can have access to our app for physical and mental health care issues. Sehat Kahani has been extremely successful in creating this corporate model of telemedicine in Pakistan. We have the largest corporate base. And the only reason was we realized early what was the pain point for corporates in Pakistan. The pain point for corporates in Pakistan is all of them get inpatient insurance, but none of them provide outpatient coverage to their employees. So we recognize this need and we fill that space with telemedicine. So we work with some of the biggest corporate names in Pakistan. We work with Rion, we work with Engro, we work with Coke, we work with HBL, and so on and so forth. Technology also allows us not only to work with corporate partners, but also integrate our app if they have an app themselves. So if you're an HBL user in Pakistan, Sehat Kahani app is available for HBL users within the HBL app as a white label solution. Similarly for Faisal Bank, similarly for Bank Al-Falah as well. And now I will give the rostrum to Ifat to take the conversation forward.
Good evening, everybody, once again, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present about Sehat Kahani. I think one thing when we were building the organization, which was of utmost importance to both us, was building a very strong team. And today we have around 250 plus employees spread nationwide. 75% and more of this is from the female leadership. So we realized early on that if we have to build a business as 2 female co-founders, it's very important that the senior management that joins us also is female. And we've seen the difference, the dedication and the loyalty that it has come forward. Would you be able to, yeah. We also realized that in order to grow the business, we have to raise investment. And collectively till date, we have been able to raise $3 million US collectively through grants, which work collectively towards sustainable impact businesses and healthcare businesses, but also through equity investment. Our seed investment that we raised in 2018 was around $500,000. This year, we raised our pre-series A round of $1 million US. And inshallah, in the next 12 to 18 months, we are moving towards raising our series A round of somewhere between 8 to 10 million US dollars as we scale forward. Our vision for the next 18 months is very critical. We have raised investment. We started our journey by creating telemedicine clinics. We shifted towards enhancing our services for the urban population through a mobile application. We initiated the corporate vertical. This year, our focus is essentially on engaging the mass market. So anyone who has a smartphone should be able to access healthcare facilities through Sehat Kahani mobile application. And that's our core focus that we are working on for this year. So scaling up the B2C application, expanding our healthcare network of the eHealth clinics in collaboration with public-private partnerships. As Dr. Sara mentioned, we are scaling up into AJK this year, and we hopefully look forward to scale into the other provinces as well in a similar model where the government facilitates and takes up telemedicine, which is happening now. We also look at expanding our other projects, such as the Tele-ICU project. We're also looking at initiating an e-pharmacy module because we realized as we ventured into the mass market that healthcare has to be holistic. When you're giving access to doctors, you also need to ensure that their entire circle is met. So it's not only a doctor or a specialist or a mental health expert that you're providing to them, but what other values can you provide to a patient? And that's ultimately the vision for Sehat Kahani. In the next 5 years, I believe we are very ambitious and we really hope to change how the ecosystem of healthcare is working right now in Pakistan. We are looking at integrating AI and ML into the technology, something that is not happening in Pakistan at this moment. And we are very hopeful that the active partnerships that we have with international institutes such as Microsoft will really help us build this. So the idea is that if any patient comes on board the Sehat Kahani platform, given their medical history, the app should be able to identify if this patient will develop, for example, diabetes or some other serious ailment in the next 5 to 8 years. And ultimately, the patient should start modifying their life. And that's something that we are looking forward to. We also want to expand our network of physicians. And I think being today at this platform will really help us expand this entire network of physicians that we have right now. We're standing at around 6,000 physicians, and ultimately we want to be able to scale and have 50,000 physicians worldwide as a part of the Sehat Kahani platform. We also hope and look forward to scale into similar markets where countries have similar healthcare challenges, such as Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, MENA region, and so forth. So this is just a roadmap. We are already in conversation with a couple of stakeholders in the Bangladeshi sector. We look forward to be scaling into other countries where, again, female physicians are not working to their most optimum level. Can you change? And I think when we talk about scaling up, scaling the technology becomes a really important part. We have created a vision of how we see our technology expanding over the next 5 years by creating disease surveillance platforms. We already have created a chatbot for COVID. Now we're looking to create chatbots for mental health. We're also looking at, in the next 4 or 5 years, integrating how wearables can also be integrated with something like Sehat Kahani. Moving forward. So I think we are an ambitious organization and we want to become sustainable. So in the next 5 years, we are looking at creating a total revenue of around $24 million with a net profit around $10 million in the 2025-2026 year, inshallah. And if we can move forward. If you talk about creating recommendations for telemedicine, I think some things which are very important is that universal access to overall healthcare is very important. Pakistan is already working on some of these points where the government is creating initiatives for creating a universal healthcare access, but we are looking at how everyone can have access to not only inpatient healthcare facilities, but also outpatient healthcare facilities. We are also, when we're talking about telemedicine, how HIPAA compliance can actually be added into it. And HIPAA compliance can become an important part of ultimately enhancing the healthcare structure of a telemedicine organization. Right now, since we are talking to the Apna stakeholders, a couple of recommendations for expanding with the Apna network would be how all the physicians of the Apna platform can actually facilitate Sehat Kahani in engaging in trainings and engaging in CME programs and engaging and enhancing the overall quality of medical practice of the Sehat Kahani physicians. Also for secondary opinions, also for specialities, which are very critical, which are not available in Pakistan, how the Apna network physicians can actually be a part of it. So these are a couple of things from my end. And these are our final achievements. You have seen some of the achievements that we have achieved over the last few years. I think two things that I'd really like to mention here is that last year, based on all of the work that we did in COVID, Sehat Kahani was mentioned in The Economist, and that was a great achievement. That out of the overall global picture, around 3 organizations were mentioned, and Sehat Kahani was one of them. And this year we were featured by CNN. So that was a great achievement that we saw, that they spoke and wrote about the work that Sehat Kahani has done. So yes, this is about Sehat Kahani, and we are open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Doctors Sarah and Dr. Ifat. It's actually amazing the work you have done, helped by the nature, the COVID, as well as your initiative and your entrepreneurship. It is amazing. And how much money can this group who's here can raise for you for your company in the next 24 hours? That's my question. So keep that thought in your mind, and at the end of this discussion, you can tell us the amount. We're going to open the discussion to our participants. I know that there will be lots and lots of questions, and I will ask my question at the end. Danish Bhai?
Thank you. Wonderful presentation, great work, mashallah. So I have a few practical questions on the background side of things. So let me just put few of them together and then maybe give you some time to address them. So you say you have 6,000 physicians in your network. And then, so the questions that come to my mind on the practical side of things will be, what's the take-home hourly rate for the physician who's working on the network? What's the number of patient encounters and average encounter time that you have for the patients on your network? What's the cost per encounter overall for your service? And then what's the net profit? You mentioned OPEX there, but those were dollar amounts, not percentage. So what's your percentage operating expense in terms of percentages? And do you think it's going to go down over time, will remain the same, or will grow as you take on 50,000 physicians in terms of operating expenses? So percentages would have been useful to see there too. I'll pause with these few questions and then add some more later.
Sure. Thank you, Danish. I think these are very interesting questions. So we have 2 kinds of models for doctors. One that work in our clinics, they take a stipend depending upon the number of hours they're putting in and a number of days they're putting in as well. And we pay them according to the hourly rate and the day rate that they have. So if they're working 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, or 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, we've fixed certain stipends for the doctors in the clinics. Why we have done that is because we want relatability of the patient with the same doctor in the clinic. So we don't want to keep changing doctors again and again. So we fix doctors, we make their rota, and they get a monthly stipend. On the app, the doctors make a flat revenue share of whatever we are earning. So the doctors are flexible to create their own fees in the application. So they can keep their own fee. It's an open market. And we take 30% of the revenue and we give doctors 70% of the profit. So that's their take home of whatever they make on the application. It really depends how many consultations they're doing and how much time they're spending on the application. The application is also very flexible. It has a toggle system. You can activate and deactivate yourself. So you can spend 6 hours on the application. You can spend an hour in the application. We have on the internal side an interactive dashboard that gives us real-time updates of how many patients are coming on the platform and how many doctors are present. So if at a certain time we get to see that there are more patients on the platform and less a number of doctors, then we will send an internal message to the doctors to become active and vice versa. So we have a team that works on that on periodic basis. Now, if I talk about the average patient encounters in a minute, so in over time, so the average doctor to patient consultation rate is somewhere from 13 to 18 minutes. It depends upon whether it's a GP consultation or a specialist consultation. On a mental health consultation, the sessions are usually 45 minutes. So that's how much the time is. How much net profit we make depends upon the line of the business they are. It's obviously lesser at the clinical side. So our net profit on the clinical side is around 37%. Our net profit on the clinical and the retail side, on the retail side, it's also 30%. We make a little more profit on the corporate side because we charge per employee per annum from the corporate.
Okay. So
one point here that some of our best doctors in the revenue share can go up to earning 100 to 150K per month. And if an average doctor who has recently done their FCPS and when they start doing working in a tertiary care hospital as a junior consultant, their salary structure in Pakistan starts somewhere between 150 to 200K. So this is, the optimum level that a doctor can actually attain over a telemedicine platform.
Okay, and then my second question will be that, as you're planning to go from 6,000 to 50,000 physicians, how many more patient enrollment will be needed to sustain 50,000 patients satisfactorily, that they are earning enough or having enough encounter? And what are the bottlenecks you're seeing in terms of patient onboarding and physician onboarding?
Yeah. So right now we're aiming at around 25,000 physicians in the next 3 years and taking it up to 10 million patients, and then adding another 25,000 in the next 2 to 3 years and taking it up to 25 million patients. That's our kind of our rough estimate on how many patients we would require, because then we estimate how many visits per patient that we would see open near, what is the customer lifetime value, and how would we incentivize doctors accordingly. So that's kind of our crude plan. I think the bottlenecks that we're seeing at the doctor end is we get a lot of interest from doctors to do telemedicine because doctors have realized, especially post-COVID, that this is an alternative revenue stream. They can see so many more patients virtually because they're not just stuck in a physical space where a patient can come into their clinics and see them. They can do their follow-ups using a telemedicine clinic. So a lot of mainstream doctors are also joining us on the platform. I think what we see as a bottleneck right now is training of physicians to become a telemedicine physician, because there's a particular aura that you need to have to convince a patient on a telemedicine platform that you are there for them, because you are limited by your physical movement, your physical access. So history taking is very important. Conversation is very important. Empathy is very important. Spending time with them is very important. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors in Pakistan, because of the rapid inflow of patients that they get in the clinics, somehow limit this part of the conversation in physical consultation. So training of doctors is extremely important. From the patient's end, I think the biggest bottleneck that we have seen so far is the ability to pay online, because in Pakistan, majority or 93% of e-commerce is run COD, which is cash on delivery. So textile, food, logistics, everything is done COD. Unfortunately, in healthcare, there is no COD. You cannot order a health consultation online and pay for it on your door. So we are limited. So this is the reason why we initiated the corporate app first, because the onus of payment fell on the corporate or the insurance company that we're working in. But in Pakistan, how many corporate employees are there? Maybe 2 million to 3 million corporate employees, as compared to 98 million smartphone users that are present untapped. So we need to get the service to them. Now, how can we break this digital payment problem? We can break it through 3 ways. We can get to them through mobile wallets, but that unfortunately has not worked. The second thing that we are experimenting now is working with telcos. So we've just partnered on Friday with Telenor, which will allow 49 million Telenor users to use their mobile balance to pay for the consultation. Now, this is a unique proposition that Telenor and Sehat Kahani has come up with to break the resistance of digital payments. So these are the bottlenecks that we see. Patients do have trust issues till now, talking to telemedicine doctors, but I think that inertia is being broken post-COVID in Pakistan.
My third question will be related to the infrastructure. So a physician that is coming on board and is joining the service to offer consultation to your patient, and you're taking 30% fee. What are they getting in return? Are you helping with patient recruitment? Are you helping with medical records, prescription, lab arrangement, prior medical information, follow up with the patient, follow up if, is there a number the patient can call if they're having side effects on the medication? What infrastructure have you built around it? What's your electronic records and those kind of infrastructure look like?
Sure. So any patient that comes on the platform, whether they come to the clinic or on the mobile application, they get their medical history in one place, because this is a big problem in Pakistan. You have these files that you carry from one place to another. But in the clinic, there's a history of the patient that is saved against their MR number, which obviously when you come to the clinic, you have access to the same information. Also on the mobile application, the patient has this provision that they can record their own medical history. Also, we understand that a lot of patients that come on the application do not want to record their medical history. They just want to quickly jump to the consultation. So we also give provision to the doctors that during consultation, they can also keep upgrading the patient's medical history when they take the history for the first time. And every patient's record gets saved against their case. So if you have a medical problem and you're seen by Dr. Sara on the application, if you come tomorrow for a follow-up, Dr. Ifat is going to see the patient notes created by Dr. Sara so that there's continuity of consultation. So you're not starting from ground zero, unless and until a doctor deems the case is resolved and close the case, and then you can come again for a new problem. So there's continuity of care. You are reminded of follow-up. So usually in Pakistan, when patients are asked to do a follow-up, the onus of responsibility of coming for a follow-up falls on the patient. But here, we call the patient for a follow-up. So you have a 24/7 call center that if you've been given a follow-up slot, we will call you and remind you that you need to do a follow-up consultation, again, ensuring continuity of care. If you get stuck on the application, if you don't know which doctor to reach out to, if you've come to the clinic after office hours, again, the 24/7 helpline will connect you to a customer services agent. It will also connect you to a nurse that can then connect you to a doctor for very immediate relief. We have a selected symptoms that we see on the helpline, but that is available for patients. The fourth and final thing is that if you get a prescription on the application, even right now we have pharmacy delivery partners that can deliver your prescription at your home. We have lab partners that can arrange for your lab to be done at your home. So if you're looking for convenience, if you're looking for affordability and quality, and if you're stuck in a position that you can't go out of the house, especially elderly women in Pakistan who don't have transport available, this app becomes a solution for them.
Okay. In my
adding here one more thing, for all the doctors that come on the platform, we also facilitate in marketing their profiles. So we also create their social portfolio, and that portfolio is also marketed. This especially works well for the younger upcoming consultants, experts, and specialists in creating their own market for patients. So that's also something that we help those doctors with.
Okay. My fourth question, and then I will let Dr. Sarwat continue conversation with other people before. I have more questions, but I'll stop here. So my fourth question is in terms of engagement with the Pakistani diaspora. People like me. So I have, visited Pakistan 3-4 times a year for the last 5 years. And I've done some clinics over there, mostly teaching clinics, but some also second opinion clinic, private practice clinic. The challenge I see is that I can make a lot more by seeing patients here than seeing patients in Pakistan. So there's no incentive. My a 13 to 18 minute visit is about one RVU visit. One RVU salary is about $65-$70, but can be up to $100-$150 for a reimbursement. And then the challenge I see in Pakistan is that if you have a complicated patient, so I see movement disorder cases. So my cases are not a 13-15 minute case. It will take 30-45 minutes, but a 45-minute visit here is about 3 RVUs. So it's a $250, $300 visit. In Pakistan, the cost is not time-based, it's fixed. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 जो भी आप charge कर रहे हैं, that's it. Whether you spend an hour, whether you spend 2 minutes with the patient, doesn't matter. And it's the same. So I have looked at this cost model many different ways, tried to slice it in many different ways, think about having a trained nurse with me or someone else in it. But no matter how I look at it, the way the reimbursement in Pakistan is, it's not cost effective for a physician who has license to practice in North America to spend any time seeing patients in Pakistan, unless he's doing it on charity basis or something. It's a money losing scheme for us. It has no incentive for us.
So I think that's a very,
yeah.
I know, I understand your question. I think this is something that we have encountered. See, what my counter to this is that when you work in a specific country, you have to compare the rates in that country. It's unfair to compare rates of a patient paying in Pakistan to a patient paying in US. That will be my first counter. The second is that, yes, it is a market which is less, maybe less pleasing for an American physician. But what we've seen in our business is that there is an aptitude to pay for consultants. There is an aptitude where patients pay 10,000, 12,000 for a consultant. But doing it on telemedicine will take time, because right now what we're doing in Pakistan is we're creating this critical mass. Even on our application, we're creating this critical mass of patients who trust telemedicine consultations, who come on the platform again and again. And anywhere that you're building a critical mass, I'll give you the example of Foodpanda. When Foodpanda was building food care delivery in the country, they were absorbing 70% of the cost and giving it for 30% of the price because they wanted to attain a critical mass. Now, once they have a critical mass in the country, now they're able to monopolize, they're able to bump their prices, and people still come to them. I think what I see is creating a healthcare market of Pakistan like this. You get a critical mass, you get people using the product, and that is when you start unlocking premium care services. So for someone like you, you don't fall in the general practitioner category, you don't fall in the specialist category, you fall in the premium consultant category. Now, if we have 1 million patients on the application, maybe 1 or 2% of patients, which is the patient you want to get, will come to you and say, okay, we have the ability to pay. We have a patient with a movement disorder in the house. Tell us how you can help us. And that is going to be value for your money. So right now we are creating this big critical mass with more generalized healthcare so that patients can come and try the application. Once the critical mass is there, then we will start making premium care services for higher paid consultants, for international consultants to come in and help patients as well. But that's going to take a little bit of time, as it does in other industries as well.
Thank you. I do have a few more questions, but I'll stop here and give someone else opportunity. So
I appreciate your interest, though. That means you're very interested. So I appreciate your interest.
I've thought about these problems for many years.
I think that's a great discussion. Danish Bhai, I think this is time for you to actually invest your cash rather than your time into this, because that is likely to accrue a greater return.
मैं वो numbers भी समझने की कोशिश कर रहा था return वाले, लेकिन वो भी मैं अच्छी तरह clear नहीं हूँ.
So let me ask Dr. Sara. Let me ask Dr. Sara a question. Dr. Saiba, since you're talking to a group of physicians and prospective investors, what are your biggest obstacles and fears of achieving your goals, let's say from now until 2026?
So there are two kinds of concerns that I can share with you. One as a doctor and one as an entrepreneur. Obviously, if I talk of myself as an entrepreneur and someone who's running a younger company, I think the fear that I have is not reaching the KPIs that we have built, not having a good enough team, not having enough money on the table to be able to reach that dream. Disseminating services for a mass market You can have the greatest physicians in the world. I can have the entire Apna community supporting me, but until and unless I have made sure that all of you are recognized by a general public, it's not going to matter. So marketing and visibility of the solution is the biggest bottleneck that exists for all younger companies today, because companies that have made a lot of money invest a lot of their marketing, visibility, digital and non-digital, to make their product available. But companies like us has to strive on limited ways of marketing ourselves. So I think one of the bottlenecks that I see is the visibility of the service to a mass market, because that's where we unlock the potential of smartphone users having a doctor in their mobile phone. The second obstacle that I see is maintaining the quality of doctors as we disseminate these services across a large number of patients and across a large number of doctors. Because one bad consultation on the platform can really damage the name of the company, and it has done with other companies in the past. So maintaining the quality, making sure that we make our service more efficient with time. So we started with 3-step process on the application. We've brought it down to a 2-step process. We have to make it down to a 1-step process, where the patient, when they come on the application, on the first window, they see the ability to connect to a doctor. Similarly, for doctors, we have to make it very efficient, because a lot of doctors that we're getting on the platform are mainstream doctors now. So we have to make it efficient for them. It has to worth their time. It has to make good money for them. It has to be easy for them to use. So technology plays a very big role in scaling the services. So marketing, technology, a good team that handles the pressure of failing forward and making sure we meet our KPIs. And the final thing is support from the public sector in Pakistan, because health is predominantly a public sector issue in the country. Unless and until we have strong policy regulating the digital healthcare sector, we won't be able to move forward. So right now we are in the process, we're finally making a digital healthcare framework in the country. We're disseminating this across the provinces. It's a good time to be in, because I think it's an opportunity in disguise that we already don't have a telemedicine policy created by some older gentleman that does not work for today. But I think that has to be strictly regulated, so that whatever products we see in the market in digital healthcare today, they follow a certain standard and guideline, so that we have more good practice and bad practice. So I think for all the doctors here today, I don't have a specific ask, but since I said in the beginning, we always get this question from the investors that we have, and we have 8 investors in the company already. We always get this question from the VC circles that we raise in, that why not doctors invest in younger healthcare companies? So I think it's a food for thought for all the accomplished doctors out here, that this is now the time where you change your mindset from philanthropy and charity in Pakistan to investing in Pakistani startup healthcare ecosystem, so that we can create sustainable, long impact in the country.
So as I said in the beginning, I was going to ask you, close to the end, we're about 5 minutes to left. What is your ask if we were to ask you to ask?
We're raising a Series A round starting mid-January. It's a round of $10 million. And we would love if we can have interest from the Pakistani Apna physicians. If they're interested in being a part of that round, we're happy to loop you in and make separate presentations.
So really, you got pretty small ask. I mean, we are Apna doctors, and $10 million, I don't think we will consider you're too small a company.
That's what we need right now. We don't want to lose a lot of equity.
Okay. All right.
We don't want to be diluted so early in the business and be kicked out of the company.
Okay. Now, in terms of quality, how do you maintain do you have a quality? I have actually 2 questions. One is, do you have what is your quality program? Number 1. Number 2, do you have a voice with the legislature in Pakistan to help with the digital health regulations?
Sure. So I'll answer the first question first and the second question later, because the second question is a bit longer. So Pakistan did not accept telemedicine as a mainstream product till 2019, but previously, as COVID started kicking in, and also because telemedicine started, because it was such a need of the hour, there was a huge doctor-patient mismatch. There were small consultations happening, but after COVID, we really got the opportunity to use this time to really force this idea of introducing digital healthcare in the country. So we got a group together under the president of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi, who's a doctor himself, so we understood it better as compared to the previous leadership that we had. He put together a committee on digital healthcare, and now we have the first draft of the digital healthcare policy of the country. We also just launched the first national digital healthcare framework, which is to be followed by all provincial ministries. The Ministry of Sindh and KP have passed the digital healthcare bill, or more specifically, the telemedicine bill. So all of it has been possible by leading digital healthcare players, including us in the country, who really forced this idea on the government to make this mandatory and regulated. So this is a good time to be in digital healthcare in the country. Now, how do we assess quality? So there are two parts to it. One is the doctor side of it, and one is the patient side of it. So in terms of the doctor side, when we get a doctor on the platform, we have an online learning management system, which is an online portal that the doctor gets access to once they've registered, once we have passed their CV to be considered as a part of our network. The OLP has around 14 courses and 3 tutorials on primary healthcare issues. It's based on algorithm-based management. So it starts from identifying a symptom, whether it falls into primary, secondary, or tertiary care, and how do we handle the patient, creating a differential diagnosis for primary care. So they have to take that. It's a quiz-based system. They have to pass it. They have to pass the tutorials. And that is when they're considered to be a doctor on the portal. Then they're interviewed by our HR, and then they become a part of the clinic and on the app. Now, once they've started doing their consultations, we have a monthly audit on a sample of patients that we see in our clinics and on the app. So we have a QA team that audits 30% of patients of our clinics and 50% of patients on an app, what went right, what went wrong. And we then rate the doctors on a rating system. The doctors who have scored extremely unsatisfactory, which is very less, but we remove them. The doctors who have performed moderately bad, we review their algorithms, we have discussions with them, we tell them what they did wrong so that they can improve. And the doctors who've done little issues, and we have bigger meetings with them to make sure that they're not repeating the same mistake. So we have a continuous evaluation system for doctors. This is just for doctors who've scored unsatisfactory on the platform. Then there's a patient side of it that we take feedback from 50% of all patients that come on the platform through our call center. We then segment the patients that have rated the application or the services unsatisfactory, and then we do follow-up calls with the patients, knowing what the problem was on the platform, and then we try to amend it.
Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Sahiba, there are some people who have posted questions on the chat. If you would kindly...
So Professor Sarwar, Dr. Imran Mirza posted a lot of question Q&A. I've added him so if he wants to unmute and ask his questions.
Yes, let's do that, please. Yes, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And Dr. Sara, a great work. Somebody said that you have to be first, different, or best to matter. And I think Sehat Kahani, checks all these boxes. I have a few questions that I posted in the Q&A in terms of, first of all, beyond physician consultation, how do you see integrating diagnostics, which is reliable lab testing and radiology, and quality medicines in ensuring better outcome for patients? It's just not physicians, a consultation. It also requires all other elements in the healthcare to be working to really create impact. So could you answer that, please?
Sure, definitely. I see it as being holistic healthcare. So we don't just provide doctor-patient consultation in our clinics. We do have medications available, which are allowed by the government of Pakistan to keep in physical settings. We also have once-a-week lab services. We also have ultrasound service available in our clinics. On the application also, we have a process by which you can order your pharmacy online through partners that we've created across Pakistan. We don't have an in-house pharmacy, but we do have pharmacy partners who deliver medicine online. We have lab partners that you can go to, or they can come to your home. So for example, if a doctor has subscribed to your CBC, when you get your prescription, you will get the name of the lab partner in that city and a call center number that you can call to and order your lab at home or go to them and get a lab in a subsidized rate. When you follow up for a consultation, we will ask you to upload a photo of the lab that you did or an ultrasound report that we asked you to do, or if you took the medicine or not. Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to make that process even simpler. So as Ifat explained, we're trying to create, the first thing that we're trying to create is we're trying to create an in-house pharmacy, so that when a patient gets a prescription from the doctor, they can order pharmacy within the application and it can be delivered in their home. That's the first thing that we're trying to ensure, because according to the feedback that we've got on the platform, 10 to 12% of our patients need pharmacy when they come on the platform. The second thing that we are trying to do is to streamline lab services with partners across Pakistan. That's difficult to do because there are 2 or 3 lab partners that have nationwide branches and they don't have active apps at the moment. But that's something that we see in the future as well.
Thank you. My next question was, how do you plan to regulate or navigate regulatory and legal issues around practices across national borders? Sitting here in Canada, I don't think I'm licensed to practice in Pakistan. I haven't maintained my license since I left the country 30 years ago. So, or somebody sitting in Saudi Arabia, providing practice or clinical care in, say, UAE. How does Sehat Kahani sort of dealing with these issues?
So I'll become temporary spokesperson of the Pakistan Medical Council right now because, but I just want to inform you that PMC has been very active. They provide online PMC licenses. You just have to pay a small dollar fee and you can become certified as a PMC physician, a physician that is eligible to work in Pakistan online without coming to Pakistan. So you all can have a license to work in Pakistan, and we do require a PMC license. And we do have 19% of our doctors sitting in America, Canada, US, Middle East, Australia, and they do work, but they have a PMC license, and we do help them in the process. So if there's a doctor who wants their PMC to be upgraded, we do have a connection at PMC who does that if they're running into problems. The second thing that I just want to tell you is PMC has also started temporary telemedicine licenses. So you can also become a telemedicine physician who's working on a Pakistani platform, and that has also started. So I think that moving forward, I don't think regulation would be an issue for anyone who wants to work in Pakistan as a telemedicine physician.
Thank you. The other questions were answered by Dr. Ifat on the chat. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I think we're starting to go over time, so we should probably wrap up soon here. Let me just quickly ask, do you guys see any opportunity at the Sehat card that the government is launching? And I heard they have plans for outpatient support too. Would that be something that could be have you guys as one of the acceptable platform or a virtual clinic or something?
So Sehat card is widely implemented in KP. It's not widely implemented in Punjab at the moment, although they say they do, but it's being run at a trial basis. KP is the only province who's done it to a level where it's being actually used in tertiary care hospitals. We have had initial conversations with the KP government and the Punjab government, and to do see it as an opportunity. But right now, I think what they're trying to do, in all practicality and honesty, what they're trying to do is to meet that optimum claim ratio that a patient can use in a tertiary care hospital and helps the government to sustain it as well, because the government has reinsurers in the process. And the government is taking help with donor agencies in subsidizing this cost when they give telemedicine insurance. So I do see it as a possibility, and Pakistan is also moving towards universal healthcare, which means that if Pakistan also has this thing, it's either they do 0 or they do 100%. So they're trying to do all of it once. They're trying to do Sehat Card, they're trying to do universal healthcare coverage. So what universal healthcare coverage allows you, and people sitting in Canada maybe can relate to it, is even if a physician or a nurse sees you in a clinic, if they're sitting in a public healthcare setting, they can reimburse it from the government. So that is what the government is focusing on right now, because outpatient private providers is a very, very big challenge for the government. 80% of patients in Pakistan pay out of pocket to private providers. So they're trying to regulate those at the moment. We see an opportunity in which telemedicine can become a part of that universal healthcare coverage, and ultimately Sehat Card as well. But I see UHC and our match better than Sehat Card, because I think a government will need at least 3 more years to streamline this process of Sehat Card and then move towards outpatient coverage.
Thank you very much. I think we're coming to the end of our talk. I'm just going to ask Dr. Sara, I'm a radiologist. Where did you start your radiology and gave up?
In an institute in Karachi. I'd rather not name them. I had a bad falling out.
No, that's fine.
I'll tell you in person or in chat.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Sarwat, so let me invite Dr. Uzair to close the session for me with his comments. And thank you so much, Dr. Sara and Dr. Ifat, for joining. What we will be doing is that we'll be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel. And then what we do is that we send a 5-minute summary through blast mail to all Apna membership. And we link the YouTube recording for them to see. And then we will probably, I will request another meeting with you to talk more on the collaboration side, either on business or on physician side, to talk more venues, and then we can see how we can support your efforts in Pakistan for this wonderful work. Dr. Uzair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sara and Ifat. I think this is one of the best talks so far in the merit. Definitely, you deserve all the good thing. And I think your model is just similar to Grameen Bank for the social upliftment in Bangladesh. We have so many questions. We have so many inputs for you, but we are running short of time. So what we will do is we will have an exclusive session with the internal team, and maybe one-to-one. I can give you a lot of very quick feedback. You look more like a business manager than a medical doctor. Your command on each and every aspect in the ecosystem, value chain, and everything is phenomenal. So I must really compliment you. So because of the shortage of time, but I will definitely have a feedback and more detailed session with both of you, maybe sometime in the future. And you are also invited to give this talk to a much large gathering in Rawalpindi by 22nd of December.
Yes.
We have sent you the invite, and we were just discussing the minutes. So, and I think this is a wonderful thing. So we are really grateful to you because we just gave you 1 week. It was on such a short notice that I requested you and you agreed, and everything. Ye to Pakistani rishte wali baat is so quick, so many steps. Dula Bayer and everything is going so fast. So thank you very much once again to both of you and the team, and Dr. Sarwat for coordinating in such a meaningful way, and Danish to articulating. So thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, Jala.
Thank you, Uzair Saab, for inviting us for this session, and for Sarwat Saab for moderating. Thank you, and Danish, thank you for questions. Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, everybody. I have tried to answer as many as I could on the chat, but you can always reach out to us separately as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ji.